What's going on, guys? Hey, it's Jared Gainham with the Inner Squared Circle. And this is a podcast or it's a interview or whatever it is. We're going to see where this goes. It's the first time we're doing it. And today it is, what day is it today? It is April 12th, 2018. And we've got a really cool little interview here for you today. And it's a guy, you guys have heard of him. His name is Hammerstone, Alexander Hammerstone. And the reason why this is so important, why I think this is a great guy for you to listen to here today and to really share his story is Hammerstone's a guy that I've known for some time, probably since 2015, 2016, maybe a little bit before that. He was wrestling out on the West Coast. And when you look at him originally, like when you just take a look at him, you're like, okay, that guy's going to be a star. He's going to be somebody. But when I got to know him more, I realized that he was more than just a physique. He was more than just this guy that was in shape. There was actually a whole lot more to him as far as, levels and how his psychology works and how he really, really wants to improve and take his game to the next level. So what I want to point out off the bat right now is if you guys think this is an interview about, getting in good shape and, you have to look the part, that's not what this is about. This is all about, getting to know Hammerstone, his transformation over the years and what his mindset's like and why he's been able to be so successful. So Hammer, welcome. Thanks for coming on today. Not much, man. I'm good, man. How are you doing?
I'm doing great.
That's great to hear, man. So, hey, for people that, they're probably familiar with you, but just in case they're not, do you mind giving like a little brief intro of yourself just to kind of let everybody know what you've been up to?
Yeah, for sure. Like you said, I'm primarily out of the West Coast. I've been wrestling now for close to a decade, but over the last couple of years, I've really started to branch out and work for, some of the major companies, and I've gone, overseas. I've wrestled in Canada, Mexico, over in Japan, and I've really started to get my name out there a little bit more and work for some of the top companies across America.
That's awesome, man. So, and here's one of the really big reasons why I want to have you on this call today. So we have a group, it's called the Inner Squared Circle, where we're teaching guys psychology, how to make it and stuff like that. And you're a big proponent. You're a big, contributor to the group. You're one of the first people in there. And I think what happens is, when you would post stuff or if I would post stuff saying like, hey, Hammerstone's going to Canada, Mexico, New Japan, stuff like that, or Japan, and doing all these high-level indies on the West Coast, I think there's the misconception where they would look at you and be like, oh, well, he's just getting lucky because he's a body guy, right? And what I want to point out right off the bat is that's the furthest thing from the truth. Because, you and I both know, because I've been there for some of this journey that you've been on, that you put a lot of hard work at. Like, this is way more than just being a body guy, right? So, like, how would you like to, kind of approach that? Or so, like, what would you say to somebody that would think that?
Well, that's obviously that helps, and that's going to get you to look. And sometimes, like, even that crosses my mind when I get booked someplace and I wasn't expecting it. It goes in my head where they go, wow, maybe they just wanted me because I looked a certain way. And then sometimes I show up there and I'm the third biggest guy in the locker room, or I'm the fifth biggest guy in the locker room, and you start to realize, like, okay, well, there's something else here. There's some other reason why I'm here, So it's like, obviously the body's going to help, but there's so much more to that, especially these days in wrestling, like you can't get by with that anymore.
Yeah. No, 1,000%. And I'm a big believer, and I'm sure the people listening, so there's a phrase that's called perception is reality. Okay, so basically, like, if you show up looking the part, of course you're going to be taken more seriously, or you're going to be taken, you're going to look the part of being that guy. So that does go a long way. But really what I want to point out is, you're just like a lot of these guys in the business. You're a guy that you have big dreams, you have big aspirations, and you've always wanted to do more. And from what I know about you, just, talking to you personally, getting to know you on a personal level, you always want more. You always want to be growing. And it's that wrestling business thing where sometimes in the past you would grind. And despite your body, despite, all the hard work that you put in, stuff just wouldn't work out for you. And I think that's an epidemic today, where guys, they have a dream, but they're told, put in the hard work, bang your head against the wall, sacrifice, don't expect anything in return, and call it passion, and they burn themselves out, and then they burn themselves out before they ever get a chance to make it to the next level, right? So
yeah, exactly.
So I know, like, were you going through something like that similar when you first started? I know when we started talking, you were going through something similar. So what would you say about something like that?
Yeah, I mean, well, the thing with wrestling is just like you said, it's just like, oh, you have to work harder, you have to work harder, and you start setting these goals, and especially if you set your goals high, WWE, whatever it is, anything less than that feels like a letdown, and you also you you carry that almost like a chip on your shoulder, and then because you haven't accomplished these things, it's like a vicious cycle because you didn't do what you set out to do, so then you think less of yourself, and then you carry yourself like less of yourself, so then you become that, going back to perception is reality, because you go, oh well, I had a WWE tryout and I didn't get signed by WWE, I must not be that good, and then you show up to the indie show and you carry yourself like a guy who just needs to keep his head down and keep working hard, and then that's what people look at you as is, oh well, he doesn't have that much confidence in himself, he doesn't carry himself like a star, he's not a star. And then it's all backwards because yeah, you're supposed to work hard, but the thing is, like, it's perception is reality. So I'm not saying you have to be an arrogant, guy, and but you do have to have confidence. You need to recognize when you have worked hard and the little things you accomplish, because one of the biggest breakthroughs like you had with me was, asking me to define what is success, because I would just have these far off distant goals, and it's like anything that wasn't that was nothing to me, which makes no sense. If you want to make $1 million, you have to be happy when you get to the $500,000 mark.
Yeah, and if I can jump in real quick, I want to give everybody some context. So, if you guys are listening for the first time, so the Inner Squared Circle, it's a Facebook group that we have. It's free to join, so just come on and join in. The prerequisite is that you're in the wrestling business and you're serious about making it. But in that group, we help guys out with psychology, with their mindset, and so basically what it is like we've taken like personal development stuff that you'd get from psychology and we've applied it to wrestling, and it helps guys break through all the stuff that's holding them back. So I've known Hammerstone in the wrestling business for a while, just through other promotions that we've been involved in. And what happened was he was in the group, and then we ended up doing phone coaching. So I would coach him through some of the stuff. And about a year ago, he was going through some stuff where he was feeling is that fair to say that you were feeling very stuck and to the point where you almost wanted to give up? Like you wanted to quit the business?
Yeah, 100%. I think I probably called you with a couple panic phone calls where I said, this is it, I'm quitting today.
Yeah, for sure. So I don't want this to be like an ad for coaching or anything like that. That's not my intention of this at all. But what I wanted to give everybody was the context of, so Hammerstone, like you're doing good now, where you're you're going to Japan and Canada and Mexico and all these high-paying indie companies and your main eventing stuff. But a year ago, like basically almost a year ago to the day, you were ready to call it quits.
Yeah.
So yeah, and that's what I want to point out, guys, is that so for everybody that goes like, oh, he's a body guy or he's getting lucky or stuff like that, he goes through and he went through the same stuff that everybody listening to this has gone through. And the only thing that set him apart, in addition to his body, though, is the fact that he's found a way to master his mindset. And that's one of the big reasons why I wanted you on this interview or podcast today. Was that's the transformation? Is how did you go from wanting to quit to turning it all around in a year? So let's take us back if you can. Like, so what was it like a year ago for you?
Well, that's it's good that you kind of explained it that way, because all the other parameters were the same. I was going to the gym just as hard. I was dieting just as hard. I was watching wrestling and studying wrestling and training and doing all these things just as hard. But I was unhappy, and I was not celebrating any of the success I had, and everything was just trying to get to an end goal. And
yeah.
I was constantly not walking on eggshells, but thinking of, how do I have to do this the right way? Which way is going to be perceived the best? Which way are people going to like the best? Which way is going to get me booked here or booked there? Or what's WWE going to like? And it was constantly this battle of trying to do things the way I thought they should be done.
Yeah. Yep. And it also sounds like not only how you think they should be done, but it sounds like you have that battle where you're almost in a mental prison where it's like, well, what does WWE want, or what does this promotion want, or what is that? Like, so you're always trying to hallucinate what other people expect of you, but you can't even know that really.
Yeah, and it messes with you to the point of not only what you're posting on your social media, to the way you're trying to plan out a match, to the way you're sending emails to companies. It was affecting everything I did. And it, like to the point where like I, months ago, like I had a match with like Brian Cage, for example. I had a feud with Brian Cage. That's a dude that I was a legit like fanboy of when I first started wrestling, and I had this big feud with him for PCW, which is one of the top companies in California. There's 1,000 people there, and having this feud with him, and I'm not even like sitting there and soaking that in and being like, wow, like this is what I'm doing,
Mm-hmm.
because I'm just thinking of all this other stuff. But once I kind of just, I think what happened is I had to go through enough things where it was like, those brass rings that you're grabbing for and you think you're doing all the right steps to get them, and they just keep slipping through your fingers, and you kind of back up and ask yourself like why you're doing this, what your end game is. And I think what most people lose track of is that we all, like, very few people go, I think I should become a wrestler because I could probably get me rich.
Yes.
They say, hey, I love pro wrestling, I want to do this. But somewhere along the way, we get caught up in all the other stuff. And a lot of us lose our love for it, our joy of it, and all these things. And I got to the point where it was, okay, am I going to quit or am I going to kind of reassess things?
I remember that specifically. Now go on.
So kind of getting to the point where it's like, okay, well, I can't quit. I'm not ready to quit. I still love this. I'm not ready to let this go. I'm not done here. But I knew if I just kept doing things the way I did, I was going to be miserable because I was. No matter.
Did you feel kind of? I'm sorry. Did you feel kind of lost, like at that point where you thought you were doing everything that everybody wanted you, but like nothing was working the right way, or?
Yeah, exactly. And it was. You just keep saying, well, I got to do more. I got to work harder, and it's to the point where there isn't more to do. You can't do more when you're working a full-time job and then you're going to the gym 2 hours and going to wrestling class 3 hours and then trying to watch Monday Night Raw and then trying to, all this stuff. You can't do more after a certain point. So the answer wasn't more. The answer wasn't harder. The answer wasn't any of that. It was a mental game.
It was a mental game. So, and I want to point this out too, guys. So this is something that, everybody can relate to, because everybody has a dream to be a pro wrestler. And the reason why you want to be a pro wrestler is there's only so many reasons, right? Either you want to grow or you want to contribute to the business in some way when you retire, or help train some guys, or you want the significance of being a star. You want the love and connection of, having a ton of fans, or all these different things. So the reason why you get into wrestling is because you think wrestling is going to give you something. So whether it's fame, stardom, fans, giving back to the business, whatever that is, and then you choose wrestling as the vehicle. And then what happens sometimes is I think in the wrestling business, what Hammerstone was describing is you have this intention, you drive down the road, but you don't have a map, and all of a sudden you're lost. And nobody's telling you how to make it, so all you start to think is, well, I just got to keep working harder, but you're burning yourself out and you're spinning your wheels. And I saw a video one time, it's a dog, and this dog's in a cage, and he's barking at the front of the cage trying to get out. And then the camera pans back, and then right to the dog's right is a large open space in the cage, where if he just took a step back and just walked out of the side of the cage, he'd be free. But he thought he had to keep pushing forward, right? Yeah, and I think that's kind of what a lot of the guys in the wrestling business end up doing. Like, I don't know, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my metaphorical hole in the cage was just for me to rewind and go, okay, so what were those things I wanted from wrestling? I wanted the significance with the fans. I wanted to I wanted to be something special to people. I wanted to provide that joy for people. I wanted a physical outlet. I want all these other things. I just said, okay, so what if we say screw getting that big major contract, and what if I just focus on these little things that I originally wanted? And I said, what if I go into this match and I say, who's Hammerstone? Who do I want to be? How do I portray that in the best way that I want?
Instead of the way that you thought somebody wanted you to be.
Exactly. And once that started happening, that's when the craziest things happened. I remember like one of the first major ones is I had a match where it was just like I felt so much like I was not considering, anybody else's perspective. I was in there doing what I thought, was best for me, was going to make me happy, was the way I wanted to carry myself. And I came to the back and, someone was waiting there and he asked me if I'm interested in going to Japan.
Wow. So look at that. So once you did it the way that you knew was right in your heart, instead of wrestling the way that you thought everybody else wanted you to wrestle, it started to work.
Yeah. And it's kind of been, what's the snowball effect where things like that just happen. Like you have that different way you carry yourself and you choose things, based on kind of those simple, it sounds simple, but it comes down to how you carry yourself, how you approach the situation, how your mind is when you're in the situation, and people are gonna feel that. It's gonna resonate with people, and I think that's the biggest part of pro wrestling.
1,000%. And I remember when we were talking, we were just kind of catching up, a few weeks ago before we decided to do this interview, and then a little bit before when we got on the phone when we started recording. But you said one of the big breakthroughs you had was, when you ask yourself the question, when we asked the question together, what actually does making it mean, right? What is quote unquote making it, especially on your terms? And then I remember you mentioned the Crispin Wall metaphor, right?
Yeah.
So if you can explain what that is.
Yeah, because one time you and I were talking, and I was just sitting there complaining about this and that, and how I hadn't done this and hadn't done that, and you brought up, hey, well, think about the story of a guy who works his whole life, gets to the WWE, main events WrestleMania with two legends, wins the world title on the grandest stage of them all, and then a couple years later he kills his family, kills himself because he was never happy.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the Crispin Wall story, and it's that realization of, wow, like I hadn't got there yet, but I was already creating that trap for myself. Where, if you would have asked me years ago, what do you want to do in wrestling? Well, there was a lot of things that I've already gotten to there, but once I got there, my brain just went, well, what's next? Well, what's next? Well, what's next? And if you don't do this, then all that other stuff doesn't matter. If you don't do this. So it's like I was saying I wanted to get to WWE, but I very well could have gotten there and then just gone, well, I want to be the champion. And just constantly created these new goals, which is a good thing, but you have to be, in a state where you're actually enjoying it. It can't just be, you can't just focus only on accomplishing tasks.
Yeah.
There has to be a deeper connection to what you're doing.
Yeah. So the deeper connection is actually enjoying the process while you're doing it, or having the goal and hitting it and actually taking a step back to realizing it, or at least even, you're in the wrestling business for your reasons, not for somebody else's, because, some people might think, oh, I have to make it to WWE to be successful. But really in their heart, they just want to be a really major player on the indies, right? Or they want to be able to do this. Some people might just want to do it for the weekend, right? And have a good little career that way. But they stress themselves out because they think they have to go to WWE. They think they have to do this thing, and they're driving themselves nuts, and they're going after something that doesn't really make them happy.
Yeah,
right?
for sure. And that's how, whether or not I ever go there, that's not something that's off the table in my mind, but I just had to go, and this isn't me trying to brag or anything like that, but, to be able to be making good money and traveling the world on someone else's dollar and wrestling guys who I think are some of the best in the world for top companies and main roles, that's really cool. And I'm really happy to be able to do that. But I had to be able to recognize that I enjoy that, instead of just thinking that was a stepping stone. Now I'm in the mentality where it's I'm excited for this weekend because I'm excited for what I get to do, and it's cool because it's if someone said, hey, this is your last month in the wrestling business, go enjoy it. It's how would you do things differently? And it's now that's how I'm carrying myself in wrestling. I'm just trying to, and it's not necessarily about going out and just having fun. There's still the aspect of, putting in work and, trying to build something for later. But at the same time, it's so many people are just so concerned with, what's down the road, that everything in between becomes monotonous. It becomes a chore. It becomes sacrifice when it doesn't have to be.
Yeah. So safe to say, like a year ago, you were miserable. You were on your way out. You wanted to quit. I remember you called me up. Like, this is it. I'm done. And if you really wanted to be done, I would have encouraged you to be done. But I knew in your heart you weren't, so I talked you off the ledge. But now, so a year later, is it safe to say that you're actually happy with your career?
Yeah, and a lot of things are different. I'm getting to, I'm making choices that are just better for me, for so many reasons. Whether it's just it's based off what's going to make me happy and what I think is really best for me, rather than what I think somebody around me is going to be judging.
That's awesome. Yeah, because I think so many people are afraid of people judging them. So from a year ago when you were miserable to now that it's actually working for you, you're able to work on your personal life. I know that was a big deal. Like, you want to be able to wrestle and work on your personal life at the same time. You're able to go to Japan. You're able to go to Canada, Mexico, all these places. You're working for really high level indie companies. I think people are actually starting to look to you as like one of the leaders in the industry, at least in the independent level. So what would the difference be between a guy that is miserable a year ago, wants to quit, and a guy that's actually has it the way he wants it, making it on his own terms right now? Because there's so many people out there right now that are stuck, that want it better, and probably either you're in the position they want to be in, or they could look up to you. So what would you say? What made the difference? Like, what got you from there to here?
I think you can't be crippled by fear. You can't be you can't live on other people's terms. You can't be worried about heat. You have to be a genuine person. It's just like wrestling is real life. It's when you meet somebody and they're phony, you see right through it. You don't want to be their friend. When you have a wrestler who's phony, you don't want to book them. You don't know, people can't connect to them because there's nothing to connect to. And it's like, we're so worried about how we're perceived instead of just letting people perceive us as what we really are. And it's like, when you're able to just be yourself and emote that and convey that to people, that's what's going to be connected to. And that's when you're going to have those special moments in wrestling where it's like, it's almost like surreal, because it's blending real life with this alter ego, but it's like, that's the most real moments there are.
Yeah, entirely. So let me ask you this. So when it comes to wrestling and stuff like that, and you're actually doing it the way that you want to do it, how much easier is it now for you to get it the way you want it, or to get more bookings, or to go to New Japan, or do all these different? How easy is it for you to achieve all these goals now that you're not worried about this stuff?
I'm not gonna say it's effortless, but things have been coming to me.
Yes.
It's because I'm putting in work in a different way. So instead of just constantly knocking on doors and constantly butting my head against the wall, I feel like I've created a situation where it's almost like a machine that runs itself.
That's a great way to word it.
Yeah, so it's obviously there's still effort, but it's inspired effort, rather than the grind, rather than the sacrifice, rather than, well, my passion will get me through this. It's easy because I'm doing what I want to be doing, and good things have come my way because of it.
Yeah, and I think that's a very, very important distinction, because I've always heard, like, there's a difference between someone that chases the puppy, right? And when you chase the puppy tends to run away. But then there's the guy that kind of sits on the couch and he does his work and he's a cool guy, and the puppy comes up to him. It's so much easier.
Yeah, and that goes with everything in life.
That goes with pretty much absolutely everything. Or it's like, a guy that, he doesn't really have any game and he's trying to work to get the girl to like him. And then there's the guy that's just naturally charismatic, that's able to just, because he's a real guy.
Yeah,
like that.
100%.
So awesome, man. Well, I don't want to keep you too much longer, but if you were to give any final piece of advice to anybody who was in your situation where, this is their dream, they want to make it, but they're stuck, what would you say? It's like a mindset thing, or what's a piece of advice you want to leave them with that they can really take away from this?
I think we need to really just take that step back and evaluate what got you here in the first place. And, you listed a couple different really good reasons that people might not realize what it is, whether it's they need a new way to connect to more people, whether it's they need significance for their artwork, whether it's they need an athletic outlet, whatever it is. Like, you have to realize, like, what actually got you into wrestling, because it's those core things. Like I said, those are what get us started. But then, we get to a point where we start defining it with material things or with, numbers and dollar signs. And it's like, we're going to end up beating ourselves up, and we're constantly keeping track of like these things that in the grand scheme of things aren't actually going to bring us any happiness unless we let them.
That's beautifully said. So that's awesome, man. So what's next for you before we get going?
I mean, I'm kind of going with the flow right now. I got a lot of good things coming up, and I'm not too concerned about chasing anything right now. I'm going to see, where this kind of journey takes me, because I think for the last basically 3 or 4 years of my career, I was chasing WWE with everything I got. And it finally got to a point where, I was basically, 1 foot in the door, and it got taken away from me. And I had to decide, like, was this only, to get there, or do I love what I'm doing? So, I had to kind of re-fall in love with what I'm doing. And I think that comes across in, not only my attitude just in the locker room, but my attitude when performing and all kinds of things. And that's what people perceive, that change.
Yeah. So you're re-falling in love with what you're doing, and to the point where, like, I think you said earlier, just with me, even off the line, you were saying, like, if you're able to get yourself to the point where you're just happy in your career and you're doing crazy stuff and you're going to Japan and building up a bigger name for yourself, it's all about building up a name for yourself because it's what you want to do, not because of whatever somebody expects of you. And then if it happens, it's because you're so good, you're undeniable at that point.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like, that's what you realize is, like, that's what's going to get you recognized. It's like when you become the best version of yourself, people are going to gravitate towards that. So it's like, I'm not focusing on getting anywhere specific right now, but I think with the attitude I do have, coupled with the work ethic that I have, that's going to bring places and people to me.
That's incredible. So basically, it's more like you have so before was you were putting the outward effort in, even though you had the body, the looks, the physique, and the raw talent. You were putting the outward effort in, and you're pushing against the wall previously. But once you took a step back and focused on the inner work, which is just changing your mindset, changing the way you focus, changing what things meant to you, that's when things really started working for you.
100%.
Awesome, man. Well, Hammer, it's always awesome talking to you. I appreciate your time, man. I'm sure, there are people that get a lot out of this. And, yeah, man, if you ever need anything, you let me know, my friend.
Of course. Thanks, Jared.
Cool, man. All right, guys, that's it for this first episode of a podcast, interview, whatever it is. We'll see where this goes. And, yeah, guys, that's it. And we'll see you on the Inner Squared Circle. Take care. Bye.